Whoa. Look who it is. It's all the people that came back. You keep coming back. Cool. What have we done over the past since the last video? Well, we read 2 books. We read that. I told you about this. I told you about this one, Star Maker. Man, was it pretty sweet. And then I read this book called Blood World, which is very interesting, by Lawrence M. Janifer. Highly recommend both books, honestly. Highly recommend them. This one was like what? I think I don't really remember, but it was like 2 days of reading. So not full days, obviously, but that was not bad. And this one was very interesting, Star Maker by Olaf Stapledon. But we're in the midst of reading another book called Lanark by Alistair Gray. Alistair is how it's spelled, but it's probably pronounced Alistair. That's another very good book. Holy fucking shit, dude. So we've been exploring more writing to recharge ourselves, and in doing that we've discovered some very interesting books along the way, and we have a lot more to go. But as I was doing it, I don't really remember how it came to me, but all of a sudden at my door came the book by Alistair Gray called Lanark. Very interesting book, a modern interpretation of hell, seemingly set in, I don't know if the hell was set in Glasgow or not, because it's a Scottish writer, and I don't know. I couldn't tell. I'm only like a quarter way through it. I haven't really read it the past few days. And it's a fascinating, fascinating book, is all I can say. Well, I'll get into it more at some other point. I'm not really a literary critic. You know, like when I was thinking, like, should I kind of talk to them about how Star Maker ended? I thought to myself, yeah, but I don't know. I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy to go to for this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? I'm barely a writer trying to be a writer, let alone someone who interprets literacy, literati, and the literate, and all that stuff. But I've really been contemplating my voice, as in my writing, and what I want to write about. And I've really thought in depth of what it is that I'm doing here. Because, so I'm reading Lanark, and it's a, how would you word that? It's like, it's a biography written by the author, but it's not 100% true. It's in fantasy in a sense. I don't know how much is true and how much is not, but clearly it's in a fantasy setting because there's crazy shit that happens. So whatever that's called, I don't know. And I thought he had a very clever voice, the way he describes things, how he paints pictures and scenes and his characters. Like, this man is gifted, heavily gifted, and I was not just jealous, but also a little sad that I'll never be that good, you know, is my first initial feelings. And so the beauty of reading like this is it helps you try to define what you're talking about and how you choose to talk about it, and what is it that you're trying to convey as someone writing a book. So I contemplated of my doings, and I said, you know, you're writing this mythology that's wrapped up in a fantasy exploration of your own mind. That's what this is. It's not a biography. Is I call it autobiography, man? I forget that shit. But I'm not writing the story of my life, because you can't one for one compare the events that happen to my characters to me. But the emotions there. I've expressed and felt the emotions that my characters are going through. So then that part's true. But the idea of the mythology is to explore the mind in the deepest way I possibly can and see if I can find a connection between my own uninterrupted personal mind and the mythologies of the past. That's been the overall goal. And so far, there's been a lot of strange parallels to the things that I'm writing in the Stream of Consciousness sessions and the things that I later on discover in other fantasy, other philosophy, other mythology. And that's kind of really it. I mean, sometimes historical events, but that's just because that's life. So there's a lot of things that I'm like, okay, so there's something to this. And the biggest, let's just say the biggest thing to explore is, what is that? What does that mean? If you find connections between mythologies of the past and philosophic ideas and esoteric ideas, if you keep finding that in your work, well, there's got to be some through line. There's got to be either some truth to this, or this is a stage of knowing. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? That's where we are in the writing. And so whenever I sit down and type, I have such little confidence in the words that I choose to express. I feel it's very limiting. Whenever I lay the words down, I'm always like, man, that is not even close to what it is. And every time I try to sit there and get it closer, it's just never good enough. I have a lot of contempt when I write, and I have a lot of I have low self-confidence when I write, and that is a true expression of myself. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I think that reflects me very well. And so it adds to the idea of it. But I just can't imagine a way where I can do this better, but that's all I strive to do. That's all I want, is to be a better writer. That's it, you know? And in doing that, it's led me down a lot of roads of just trying to truly find my own voice. And not only find it, but accept it, because sometimes I try to steer away from it. You know, a lot of the problems with myself is I have a really hard time with larger words to expand my vocabulary. You hear me say the same old shit or describe it in weird ways because I can't remember words because they leave me in that moment, and I'm sitting here going like, what is that called? I don't know. And that happens a lot. And so in a lot of ways in my writing, it that comes through. So let's say there's a prophecy that a priestly order knew about for a long time, and something happened to them and they disappeared from history. And then your hero walks into an ancient temple where they used to be, and maybe there's one guy sitting there, let's say. He's holding the fort down. I don't know. He's a last survivor. And in some way, when the hero tries to ask him, I don't know, what the fuck he's doing, the guy will not remember. He'll be like, I you know, like, we did stuff here. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he'd have a general idea, like, yeah, we were the priests of the fucking fire temple, and we used to blah, 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 but the rituals are gone for me, you know? The understanding to me is vague at this point. And things like that. That's just how my writing kind of happens to be. Like, we don't really remember what we're doing, but we're doing it. Now, it wasn't on purpose, but on an accident in a sense. That was because it's like, why do humans keep doing these things over and over and over again? So, let's go to a real life example, and I kind of tell you what I mean by that. I see sometimes on my stream, and I don't know how it pops up, but something I watched triggered this, where I'll see Muslims going around and trying to convince Christians, look at the Bible, look how, you know, like, this is what it says. That's what Muslims say, not Christians, right? Christians go to Jews and do the same thing. You don't really see Jews doing it a lot, but you see the Muslims and the Christians kind of going to each other and trying to disprove their, you know, religion and say how Christ is this or the Muslim is that. And it's really weird. And I just, as someone like me, I sit and look at that shit and go, that is like the dumbest fucking little trap. That's how you know it's bullshit, is if that's what you feel you need to do. And at some point you've forgotten like what it's all about, and you're sitting here walking around with the fucking holy book to some place where there's a bunch of people that aren't like you, and trying to convince people on a camera with your own biases and your own editing that yours is right, and you're trying to help them find the true God, right? That is fucking bizarre. And it's so weird, and you've forgotten the truth of what it really is. All religions have. It's like this small little fraction of the fucking inevitable truth. It's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing to me. And that is the idea of what people do. We just continue this pattern all the time, and then you continue for so long, you almost forgot why you started in the first place, and you've reinvented its new purpose along the way at some point, but you don't remember when that was. You thought maybe that's how it always was. We've always been doing this. Like, it's just, that's what I mean. It's strange that we continue to do these processes like that. And I look at our society and I see the same goddamn thing. And I was reminded of that when I was reading, the ending of Star Maker here, where the universe maker, the star maker, and in some sense it basically laid out like, oh, I've done this countless times before. I've made universes all the time and they always fail. It's only this one that's finally, it's working. I experiment like a child sitting there playing. And now this one finally works, and even though there's suffering and turmoil and you guys are dying and you're afraid, I'm satisfied because I made something. But that's turned into each religion that each civilization has, of their imagining of the Star Maker, how it's always a representation of who they are, right? When you imagine a god, you don't say, yeah, God's a dog. Like, you imagine him in your image, because that's what the Bible says. We always do that. We make something out to be of us. When you see the expanding universe, you think, well, we must be the most important in the entire emptiness that is. And it's insane to think about. So for me, the idea that we get caught up in a process that no longer holds true definition, but we find true conviction in. That's something that I've just gathered in life, and now whenever I write in my work, or I have like a society or a cult or anybody like that, that's a group of people, I tried to make sure that they really believe what they're doing that's fucking it. Like, it was crucial for me to say there is no such thing as the bad guy in the stories. I will do my damnedest to make sure everybody I want to root for. It doesn't matter if they're the evil characters or the good ones. I made sure that what they're doing is legitimate to them, and to someone if you convince them hard enough. Like, no, listen to me. Let me tell you exactly why. And you listen to the argument, you're like, wow, I can't deny that. Like, I made sure everyone was like that in my writing. Because I'm like, that's not realistic to say, like, yeah, we know we're the bad guys and we're going to lose. That's not how that works. And so in a lot of ways, that really helped me explore what is good and evil. But there's always this tinge on it as well, and that is the gray. Because that's just something I've seen in life. When I think back about everything I've looked at, I'm like, there's really no such thing. Remember how I said there's no such thing as truth? Well, there's no such thing as good and evil, really. When you get down to it, and you separate yourself enough from the world, you realize there's no such thing. It's just an idea. And which idea do you want to believe? And trust me, it's very convincing. It's a hella convincing to, like, come to these realizations. You're not right or wrong. It's just, which side do you want to be on? And so that's something that I explored in my writing a lot. Not necessarily on purpose, but that's just my own viewpoint. I struggled with trying to have true conviction about anything. So a lot of my characters are just floating adrift and going, I don't fucking understand this shit. I mean, look at Dove, for instance. That's the story that you actually know about. Just look at Dove. Like, he's just floating adrift. He doesn't necessarily know what's going on. He might discover. But right now he's like, I don't even, like, I thought I knew, but now I don't. And that's like his story. Later on in the books I'm writing, that's what the character deals with heavily. Is just, I thought I knew what was going on. Now I don't, and I don't know if I ever will. Because every time I try to realize it, I'm just being convinced by another fucking guy why his opinion's right. Or this guy's opinion's right. This one's right. It's everyone's got some fucking opinion that you have to just accept or deny. And it just feels like you're tasting the world at that point. That you're moving through life, and it's your choice which group, which idea, which thought form is the one that you want to have. And once you find it, you just get in it. It's a lonely, I wouldn't say irksome necessarily, but it's a very strange path to be on. And I notice a lot of people just succumb to an idea. They just go, you know what, I've searched and I'm just going to find solace in this one. That echoes the most right thing that I feel, so I'm just going to close myself off and be in this little idea. Whether that be religion or science or, I don't know, some other fucking thing. Some people go lesser with video games, or they go with books, or, I don't know, cultural things. Whatever you can find to make your life easy on this plane. And that's, in my view, giving up. But there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just you chose an idea. There's no right or wrong in it. You can find it, you think, but that doesn't mean shit. It's just been like that for me as a person, so it comes through in my writing. There's just a lot of unanswered questions and uncertainty, excuse me, and wonder and hope. Like maybe I'll find something in this. Now, as the writer, so far I noticed the only fucking solace I may find is in death. That must be it, because everything else, there is no fucking solace in this shit. It's just a repetitive fucking bullshit. Over and over and over again. At some point, I have to accept that. But it's fucking difficult. So, the heroes of the story will suffer the same fate that the writer does. And that is something that I can't really fix. I've just got to accept the fact that that's who I am and that's what it's going to be, you know? I've gotten to this point now where I'm going to say it like in a simple way. I've zoomed out enough from the world in a way where I've disassociated to the point where everything I see touched by the hearts and minds of men is tainted. And I see through it, you know, no matter what it is, no matter what the message is, no matter what the idea is, I just see a bunch of fucking people needing something so bad to feel okay. But in doing that, they've abandoned their true purpose, I think. They've relinquished themselves to something what they consider higher. But in reality, they've given all their control to something outside of them. If you have to recruit in a religion or a science concept, if you have to convince people, generally I find that's something to steer from, because that's, you don't need, if you need me, then something's not right. You shouldn't want to convince me of something. So it was always a strange idea to me. And so I try my best to always steer clear of that shit and be very careful around ideas. Because you could be easily susceptible. If it makes the slightest bit of sense, you can add on your already agile mind, and your queried thoughts may be answered in the vagaries that are whatever this group is. That's been something I've gathered, you know. Do I want to think this? Not necessarily, but that's just kind of where I've been led as myself. So I go to the writing and I wonder to myself, will my characters, my heroes, ever discover the truth? Or will they continuously unravel more and more the bullshit that everything really is, and how much of a lie the whole world is? I don't know why, but that's just what it's become. In reality, in truth, all I ever wanted was peace. Peace of mind, peace of heart. But it seems to me the more I just venture out and try to puzzle piece things together or try to answer the questions that I have, the more I realize I just can't answer these questions. Nothing has ever answered a question of mine in a way that made me feel like, okay, this is okay. There is some truth to this. No, it's never felt that way. So it's just kind of made my life, it's more confusing, you know. Every time I say something or feel something, either someone agrees with it and they say that they know more than me, or they don't agree with me and they're trying to tell me some other fucking thing. That's just how that is. I mean, shit. There's not very many comments in my videos, but the ones that there are, just read them. It's just, no one's ever wrong. I find that weird. We never talk about how wrong we were. You know? Why? So, as you can kind of tell, just with myself in this world, I really look at people and things and with not necessarily discontent or ire, but just kind of like, dude, you're full of yourself. Just fucking admit you're full of yourself. It's okay. There's no problem in admitting that. You can just accept it and maybe move on and seek change. But it's just hard to find that. It's hard to find someone willing to accept their piece of shit, you know? I know that I'm a piece of shit. I know that most things I say are fucking wrong and stupid. Not only to someone else, but more importantly to myself. Not everything. Not everything on these videos. These videos, you know, are separate from my life, so I can't tell you what I say in these videos, but I'm not saying it's all lies. I don't remember. But in my day-to-day life, I lie all the time. Pretend everything's good, or pretend I care, pretend I don't, you know, like anybody. I just want to, at the end of the day, I just want to be a good writer. That's all. That's it. That's it. I don't want anything else in this world. I just want to be able to write. And the weird part is, writing is one of the things that is the most difficult for me to do. I don't enjoy it fully. I enjoy it in moments, if that makes sense. Small moments of writing I enjoy, but as a whole, it's tedious. It's hard to do. To be so honest, or to be so truthful, it's just difficult. You know what I mean? I was like, I don't know for myself if that's just how that is, or if I'm just pushing really hard like I usually do. I don't know. I was talking to someone at work. I was asking them if they like reading. And she's like, yeah, I do, but you know, when you work 40 hours a week, it's just hard to do that stuff, you know? And I wasn't trying to be an asshole, but I started thinking about it. I'm like, I'm working 40 hours a week too. I'm reading whole ass books, no problem, eh? And writing and doing these fucking videos, like, it's not that hard. You just gotta do it. But the way she's like looked at me, it was kind of like, huh, you know, like, well, not everyone's like that. Like, and I just, it clicked, you know, like something you don't really realize for a while, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, whoa. And I realized, I'm like, you have to try. You have to, like, that's what it is. You have to continuously do this, and in doing that, there is suffering in it. Because you're exhausted. Like, all the mental decisions and all the physical exertions you have in your job and all that fucking shit that wears you out, and then you come home and you go, okay, I know you're like almost falling asleep sitting down, but let's go. Get reading, you know, and okay, now that you're done reading, you need to interpret that. Like, let's go, we gotta write. But you know, I think that the struggle that I have is like, well, I want to enjoy my life, not just sit and be tired from my job and have to recharge to go back to the job, because I fucking hate it. It just doesn't make sense to me to like to relinquish myself to a job and like, you know what? I'll surrender my persons to this stupid job, and when I retire, then I can be okay. That is a waste of a life. To sit there and work for fucking 50 plus years or 40, really depends on, you know, if you can retire, if we get to retire at our age, God knows. You just waste all that time, this made up thing, this job, this idea of greed wrapped in pretending to care about people. And then you get done and you're like, oh, okay, cool, now I'm retired, I can do things, and you don't know what to do because you don't have a fucking personality, and your kids have grown, so you're like, oh, well, I don't know what I am. And next thing you know, flash of an eye, you see that same person working part-time in another job. Well, I don't, you know, give me something to do. That to me is a fucking nightmare. A nightmare. I might as well get a gun and blow my fucking brains out now if that's my ambition, my goal. To pretend I give a fuck about this company who's, let's be honest, all companies are straight fucking liars. That's just what they are. They just want your money. We all know this. But they pretend like, thank you for allowing us to bring our passion for our product to you. Like, dude, shut the fuck up. You don't give a flying fuck about this. Here's another example of my writing. It's like, dude, fuck you. Like, you're a liar. You're a piece of shit, too, for lying to people. Drawing pictures on your goddamn ads to make it flashy, and or using actors that are multiracial and all happy and everyone's supported, but you're selling a phone or some shit. I don't know. And it's just like absolute fucking gobshite. It's bullshit. That's something that, is that what you want to do? You want to contribute to that? You want to teach people? You want to go to a bank and pretend you care about the people there? I mean, you may, but that bank don't give a fuck. Or, I don't know, wherever else you want to work. Even if you work in television or some shit, it's all made up. And you waste your time there putting all your passion, energy into something that you get pennies on the dollar, if even that. Pennies on the $50 bill, we'll say. And you think there's satisfaction in that? I don't know, man. Like, I can't help but see it that way, but that's just what I'm trying to tell you. It's like, that's fucked up. That's a fucked up way to be. I can't like fathom that. I can't fathom the idea of me making my book, let's say, a business, right? I sell enough of it. I hire people to help me out drawing and I don't know, like advertising, let's say, and making board games and I don't know, making it a product. And I'm reaping in all the fucking benefits and the rewards and getting all the credit for it because I got toys and I got video games and I got all this stuff from my mythology. And I, you know, keep selling my heart and keep making more money. And all these people underneath me, like I say, I really give a fuck about, but they're just the machine helping me work. And they don't find true satisfaction. They think they do because they love the book. And I use that. And I say, yeah, you're helping me and you're helping you make this a better world with our cool book because there's good messages in it. It's almost like the Bible. And they believe it. And I can't imagine like sitting here going like, yep, all these people are working for me on this idea that is mine. And it's getting out there because it's worth it. I find that to be appalling because I'm like, I'm just a fucking guy. And that's a message. Now imagine I made a fucking product. I don't know. Some sort of clock or something. Or you know what I mean? Or an object I made. I want to help the world. Same with those companies. They just want to loan you money to help you get some money. That's all they care about. Hey, we're here for you. You need to borrow some money? We got you. They just care about you. They're just trying to help you. Car insurance, man, they give a fuck about you. That's why you pay them every month. You pay more into it than you ever take out of it. Unless you get in a lot of accidents, but whatever. They care about you. They want to help you save money. Like, you know, it's that bullshit lie. Like, man, I think that's my biggest anger in this world is don't fucking act like you give a shit. That goes to religion too. Like, I'm just saving your soul. Like, fuck you, dude. You're recruiting. Knock it off. Like, stop lying. That's my biggest rant, I guess, of today. In the world that I find myself in, there's a lot of things I'm not sure about. There's a lot of people telling me that they're right. There's a lot of people trying to point me in some direction that you need to accept Christ, or you need to, I don't know, learn about fucking this cultural thing, or you need to, I don't know, whatever else motherfuckers have. They're always trying to direct you someplace, you know? And you go there, you know, with a little bit of like, okay, this is interesting. And it's just more the same shit, just in new clothes. Meanwhile, you need to figure out who the fuck you are. You don't have a lot of time. And everyone around you is absolutely miserable pretending not to be. And you need to not do that too. And I just keep, when I write, that's what I, like, that's it. That's what I am. I feel my character is just alone trying to figure out how the fuck can I find some solid ground on this shit. I go to Dove and I say, how the fuck am I supposed to find something that makes sense to me when the entire time I am confused? I might be going like, you know, that makes sense in way. But mostly I'm like sitting there with my feet dangling over the abyss thinking like, I want to put my feet down. I'm tired. That's kind of what I've noticed life is for me. As the writer. Like, holy fuck. What the fuck is this shit? I don't know. So like, right here. Let me read something to you. It's a rough draft, but let me read it, because for some reason I feel the fucking want to do this. My last days were filled with more than a little anticipation, though it was wrapped in fear, I should admit. Still, all of my being was begging for an end, though by my own hand, I should say not. Death by wolves, like my poor wife? No, again. Though the prospect of starving to death was becoming more and more irksome as my stomach hurt more and more. Yet perhaps freezing to death? That would do something. I hear in your last moments you begin to burn up, feeling hotter and hotter. Yes, that might do. In fact, that is what I mean to do. And if I'm already starving, well, venturing out to the cold will only be a sure death. And maybe I could make something out of it. Perhaps I could try and make it to the summit of this massive titan. Perhaps a goal. And if I perish along the way, well, so be it. But if I make it, well, then that's just something to add to the story of my quiet demise. So it was settled. I was to climb this summit of this nameless mountain. Yet as I made my way, I told myself I would give her a proper name, if I indeed survive. The only question is, what name? Oh well, I'll let Her Majesty speak to me. The ascent to the top. Well, it was harder than I thought it would be, and yet not. It's terribly cold indeed, but somehow I've been able to just bypass the treachery of death's hand and climb with almost relative ease. It's a seeming calm day, and surprisingly not terribly cold, though it was freezing. Apparently, I'm made of sterner stuff than I thought. Most likely my Scandinavian blood doing me justice. I should make it to the top soon, I thought. In fact, it was in sight. Skip time. Euandra. I don't know why, but that was the only name I could think of. Either that or just Gaia. Yet that felt too easy. So Euandra it is. Somehow I could feel it calling out to me, like a fell voice on the wind. Yet as I look out at the horizon, it was a beauteous sight as far as man could see. The land here was most wondrous, makes one forget all the turmoil that awaits down below. God knows what became of man after the grid went down. But what is amazing is this. You could not tell what stirred below, or what lives, or of who lives and dies. This must be how God feels, I thought. For all I could hear was the blowing wind and bitter cold embrace of death around me. It makes one think that was any of it worth it. It makes one think, was anything worth it? Man rose from the ground and built massive cities, constructs of massive civilizations within the internet. But what did it all mean? Nothing. We're gone and look what remains. Amazing. Anyhow, I should make my way down again. Clouds are looking fierce. It goes on. Trying to escape from this fucking nightmare sometimes seems like seeking a death. Seems, because that's how what we explored here, seems like you want to die. You know, you want to blow your fucking brains out or kill yourself in some way. But in my belief, there's a certain kind of death you can have on this plane, right? I think people nowadays probably call it ego death. But I think it's much deeper than that. You have to find a death of all that you've known. You have to lose it all around you to rebuild again. And in that rebuilding, you start to look around you at the others in their lives and you wonder, will they ever find this peace? Will I ever find peace? There's something about the mountaintops of coming the closest to what we think is the heavens and God, that you could find the oneness of understanding that all down below, it was almost meaningless. Some kind of people would realize that when they saw the first people going up into space and they looked back to Earth. It made everything seem meaningless again. Why is that a concept in our minds? Why didn't we look down and say, that's so much more meaningful now that I can see it all played out? Right? We always look at it and say, holy shit, you can't see anything we've done from up there. There's something bigger at play. That's that feeling that I was describing. Everyone gets caught up in their little bullshit, stupid fucking lives and beliefs and the money they make and the jobs they have. And it's just like, for fucking what? You're tricking yourself. Someone like me comes across as aloof and a fool, and it's almost sad to some people probably, because I seem like, oh man, he's never going to find peace. He just needs to accept some human concept and he'll be okay. But I see everyone else like the fucking fool. And it's this isolating factor, and then here I stand at the top of this mountain looking down and going like, well, nothing killed me along the way. Now what? You know, I got here. I survived. I gave it a name. I found myself. I've named this moment. Time to descend. Nothing else I can fucking do. Can't hang out up here. There's no one around. And you go back down and it's like you wade back into that human bullshit level. It's like a slow hell. And to me, the descent is very much represented in, so Dante's Inferno is the old story. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I'm culturally aware of it. But the more I read about Lanark of Aleister Gray, I'm like, it's a modern interpretation of going down and wading into the hell to find absolution again. You must go through the hell of the human trudgery and the bullshit and the stuff that we fucking do that we think matters to get out to this point of this purgatory. Well, our hero went through it already. He went up the mountain. He realizes, like, well, I go back down again. There's nowhere else to go. I can't ascend from the mountain. He thinks. And that's kind of where we're at. So as a writer, it's crucial for me to try to explore this. It's just, I'm trying my damnedest to be honest about how I feel about it. And be my most truest self. Even though I have a whole lot of doubt in my work, in my writing, my word choices, in my choices of the stories I tell, there's so much doubt in it, but I know I'm like, this is the only thing I can do. But anyway, that's all we have to say about that, and we shall see what we do for the day. I don't know. We'll find out. I really hope I can get some momentum and write a little more. I don't know yet. We'll see. It's already written. I just got to copy it down to the computer. Sometimes even that's too hard to do. Oh well. But until next time, I'll see you then.